Olson was born in a sod shack on a farm just outside of Fir Mountain and went on to conquer the rodeo world. Born in 1914 to homesteaders from Norway, Olson's mother died when he was 15, and Carl took on work to help support his three sisters.
His dad farmed and did other jobs for people, and he got his start breaking horses for neighbors and ranchers and just excelled at it, and took off from there.
He became recognized for his talent for handling horses even before he began his rodeo career and made a living as a ranch hand during the 1930s. He started competing in rodeos at 19 and won the Wood Mountain Rodeo in 1936 when he was 22. The Wood Mountain Rodeo started in 1890 and is the longest continual rodeo in the country. He began to compete on the circuit in the area, traveling from rodeo to rodeo on horseback.
Carl Olson paved the way for the rest of us, for the Cowboys. And after that, Mark Roy followed, being also a world champion. And there's only been 2 world champions out of Saskatchewan, and they're both out of the Wood Mountain Rodeo Arena. Since then, there's been multiple Canadian champions and such out of Wood Mountain, but it starts someplace, and that was with us. It was with Carl Olson.
Olson moved to Cardston, Alberta, right on the Canadian border, to find better competition in Alberta and easier travel into the United States. By that time, cowboys would travel to rodeos in groups or pairs to save on costs, and Olson's personality and skill never left him short of company.
Carl was a charismatic and big-hearted, kind gentleman, and people wanted to travel with him. And being a world champion, in order to be the best, you got to be around the best, and that's how you succeed. And so he was legendary in helping other cowboys reach the top.
In the 1920s and 30s, rodeo grew in popularity and would fill the largest arenas in the United States. In the 1940s, Hollywood star Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, formed a company that took over most of the largest rodeos in the country. Cowboys of the era, like Olson, had plenty of competition that kept them on the road for most of the year. Olson won the Saddle Bronc at the Cheyenne Frontier Days in 1944, a 10-day competition that was the second largest rodeo in the world at the time, and won major titles in Tulsa and Houston. In 1947, Olson became the first Canadian-born cowboy to win a world championship in Saddle Bronc. After twice being runner-up in the Saddle Bronc, he won the title at the Madison Square Gardens in New York, and total prize money was the equivalent of nearly $168,000 in 2024.
The road to being a world championship, to being a world champion it's a long one for anyone, but to come from small rural Saskatchewan and to be riding at Madison Square Gardens in the 40s in front of those big crowds and against the best in the world, it's amazing.
He won the International Rodeo Association's Saddle Bronc riding title in 1948 as well. He made $12,000 in winnings in 1948, well over $200,000 in today's money. And during the 1940s, Olson also had a sponsorship for the Great Western Garment Company out of Edmonton that was ahead of its time. One of the things that set Olson apart as a bronc rider was the way he used newsreels to study some of the stock he might end up riding, and then adapted the way he rode the broncs to maximize his scores from the judges. Practices that were unheard of in the 1940s.
Rodeo was such a big event back then. That's what they would video it, and he'd play him so he could see what a horse did. So if he drew that horse next, he knew exactly how much bronc rein to give it or what it might do. And he figured out horses quicker than anybody, whether he had to really set his feet hard or whether he could float. And he had that charisma. He didn't ride every horse the same. He knew it was a judged event, and he'd make a weaker horse look hard and a harder horse look easy. And to do that, that's what took him to the top, to be a world champion. And that's what guys are still doing, and he was one of the first.
Olson worked both ends of the rodeo arena, competing in saddle bronc, steer wrestling, and wild horse racing. The Canadian Protective Association, now the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association, was formed after the Second World War, and Olson won its first all-around title in 1945 at the age of 34. He also won the all-around Canadian title in 1948. In 48, he won both the saddle bronc and the steer wrestling national title, becoming the first cowboy to win national titles in 2 events. In total, he won 6 Canadian titles and likely would have had a lot more if they were there to be won when he was younger. Olson retired from full-time rodeo competition in 1954. He was inducted into the Canadian Rodeo Hall of Fame in 1982 and passed away in 1983.
He was a real pioneer in the pro rodeo world. A fellow bronc rider once said he had a hand like $1's worth of bananas, and his heart was bigger than the whole outdoors.
Installed in the Saskatchewan Sports Hall of Fame on September 28, 2024, Carl Olson.